Hello, welcome to this demonstration of the CA Continuous Delivery solution. We'll start our demonstration by showing you how the Continuous Delivery Edition can be used to track a release, how that can integrate with release automation to orchestrate not just your virtual services, but your test data management and also your automated testing, and promote that through your various environments. Now, as part of our demonstration, we'll be showing you a sample application, in our case, the CARS application. This application contains a back-end database running on SQL, a virtualized service. So our bin check is something not available in our test environment. So we virtualized it, and we're going to inject test data not only into the database, but also into that virtual service. And also using release automation, we're going to provision the application across these multiple tiers. Now to start with, I'll show you the CARS application. So as you can see, it's a web application. If I click on the search, you'll see we get back a list of cars. If I click on the VIN lookup, we can enter a VIN number, and that'll do a lookup and get a response on that car, as you can see. Now what we're going to do first is we're going to go and look at Agile Central. So Agile Central is the tool that is used to track our user stories and our defects for this release. On the dashboard here, we can see all of our various user stories in various states, defined in progress, completed, and accepted. Also, we have our test case data down here, so the results from the tests that we've run, the success and fails. And we're going to start with looking at this user story 27. So here's the details of our user story. And we're going to start with, this was scheduled for 2.1. We're going to schedule it for 2.5. And also, if we come up here and look at our test cases, you'll see that this has a test case assigned to it. Here's the test case. It's an acceptance test. Currently, it's a failed state, and you'll see why in just a second. So here's our user story. At this point, we're going to switch to the continuous delivery product. This is looking at the release, the 2.5 release. So as you can see here, what we've got is on the left-hand side, this is data from Agile Central. So these are our user stories and defects assigned to this release 2.5. Now we just modified a user story to say it's now part of this release, and it was user story 27. And you see it's not listed here. If I refresh this panel, you see automatically that user story is now assigned to this release. So the user of the CDE product now knows all the user stories aligned to this release. What we've also got here is various phases. So we have our phases for requirements gathering, the QA, pre-production, production. And what happens is a release will move through these phases left to right. So we go through requirement gathering. When that completes, we'll start the QA. When that completes, we go to pre-production. And what we're going to do first is we're going to start our QA release. Now the first thing that we have here is each of these blocks denotes a task. So where it's got an M, that's a manual task. So we're currently waiting for a manual step. In this case, engineering needs to say that they've actually done the code quality review, that we're going to just say that's done. When that task is complete, automatically we go to next task, and that's another automated task. And in this case, what we're doing is we're preparing our environment for our test data. So this first step is basically getting the database ready for the test data we're going to inject, which it just did. And when that's complete, we move on to the next stage. Now these three are grouped together. You can see the grey box around the outside, which means they can run together. And the first thing is we're going to inject test data. At the same time, we can be deploying our inventory service, our virtual service, and also we can be deploying the application. So these three things are now running in parallel. And we're going to just go and look at the test data management product and go to our requests. And what we'll see is, if I just refresh this, it hasn't started just yet. We'll see in just a second. We can see that our publishing job 4303 has been added. It's currently not started, and in just a second that will start, and that will run, and that will inject test data into the relevant systems. So we'll give that a second just to get going. So as you can see, that's now running. That will run for a little while, and that will then inject that data. And while it's doing that, we'll go back to the CDE product. And you can see the other components are finished. So that's still going. We've deployed our virtual service. We've also actually deployed the application. Now we've not gone on to automated testing until this is complete. So when all these three steps are complete, we'll then automatically move on to testing. Now you can see that's just completed. We've now completed those three phases. And straight away, we've gone on to our automated testing, and that's starting now. And at this point, we can go and look at that testing. So when these tests start, we're going to go to the testing screen and look at the tests. And what we'll see in just a second is these tests starting. So there's the two tests started. We're actually running two tests, a Selenium test and an API test. They take various times, but in just a second you'll see these will refresh and these tests will start. And when they've run, we can then click on the actual test itself to look at the output. So as I said, these will take a little while to get started. There you go. So the API test is completed and the Selenium test is still running. We can drill into this test and we can see that it completed. There were no errors. And you can see here the output from this test. You can see how long each of the steps took and the output of those tests. So this is where you troubleshoot if a test failed. And in just a second, what we'll see is this other test. This takes about a minute. So in a second, that will finish. And we'll go back to the CD product. And you now see that that's now moved on because one test is completed. And we're just waiting for the final test to complete before we move on to the last task. So you now see those tests are completed, but the final check, we're actually checking did all the tests in Agile Central pass. And as you remember at the start, we actually marked a test as failed. If I click on that, it will show me that test case 35 has failed. So what we're going to do is we're going to stop this phase. We're going to go back to Agile Central and just go into the test cases. And we'll mark that test case that was failed. So you can see it here, it's failed. We'll just go and edit that. And we're going to mark it as done. Let's pass. There you go. And save that. While we're here, we'll just have a quick look at one of the user stories. So I'm going to look at user story 10. And what you see is that test we ran, the actual test results for that test case have been posted back to Agile Central. So here in the results set, we can see that's the test that just ran. And if I click on the PDF link, we'll find that's the actual output from that test we just ran, with all the details for the test. Now we'll go back to CDE and we're going to mark this test as being disable it to stop it running again, and we're going to rerun this phase. So that test that blocked this has now been fixed. We'll rerun that phase. So what's going to do is we'll do that phase again. This check is going to check did all those tests in Agile Central complete. If they did, as they did there, this phase is now complete, and we have now been promoted this release into pre-production. Now, however, pre-production, even though it's set to automatic, isn't going to start straight away because we have an approval gate. And this is now waiting for one of the members of the QA group to approve it before we start the next phase. And finally, if I just go to the dashboard, we'll show you the overview of what we just did. So here's our dashboard view of our environment, how much time we spent automated, how much time we spent manual, and the failure rate within our deployment. And if I click on the cars application here, we'll see for the 2.5 how much time we spent in QA. And that's the end of the demonstration. Thank you for your time.